Every day in the Christian church, we hear people say that Jesus is their healer. Yet, many who call themselves Christians don't follow his teachings or example. This isn't just about one issue, it's part of a larger pattern where scripture is misused and important teachings are ignored. One major example is how many Christians ignore Yahweh's dietary laws. Despite claiming to follow Christ, they often eat foods that these laws forbid, like pork. This problem isn't new. For instance, Martin Luther and his family reportedly ate a lot of pork, reflecting the diet of many Europeans at the time. For Afro-Caribbeans and African Americans, this issue has a different historical context. During slavery, they were forced to eat whatever their owners gave them, which often included foods that weren't part of their traditional diet. They were also taught Christianity by these same European Christians, who didn't always follow the dietary laws themselves. This led to confusion and the belief that what we eat doesn't matter as much as what we say and do. But this interpretation misses the point. While it's true that what comes out of us, our words and actions, defies us, this doesn't mean the dietary laws are irrelevant. In today's culture, we are often told that we can eat whatever we want. Yet, we see a rise in health problems, many of which can be traced back to our diets. Understanding Yahweh's dietary laws can help us see that these rules are not about restrictions, but about protection. When people hear dietary laws, they often think of them as limitations. But if we change our mindset, we can see that these laws are meant to help us stay healthy and strong. Yahweh, as our Creator, knows what's best for us. He has given us guidelines to protect us, not to restrict us. In our relationship with Yahweh, we should follow His rules out of respect and honor for Him. However, today's culture teaches us to reject these laws, suggesting that we can do whatever we want because we have Jesus. This is a common belief in mainstream Christianity. When people come across messages about following Yahweh's laws, they often ignore them because they want to follow their own desires. So now, instead of just saying, "Follow Yahweh's laws because you love and trust Him," I need to explain why He made these laws. Understanding the reasons behind these rules can help you see why they are important. This isn't a criticism of anyone. It's just a reflection of the times we live in. I hope this discussion helps more people trust Yahweh and understand that His laws are not burdensome restrictions. Yahweh created us and everything in the world, so following His laws helps us live better and stay out of trouble. Let's dive into His dietary laws to understand them better. We need to start with the basics, clean versus unclean animals. Yahweh commanded Israel to distinguish between clean and unclean animals, birds, and creatures that crawl on the ground. This is explained in Leviticus 20 verse 25 and 26. You shall therefore distinguish between clean animals and unclean, between unclean birds and clean, and you shall not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird, or by any kind of living thing that creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be holy to me, for I, Yahweh, am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. Clearly, Yahweh instructed Israel to eat what He has deemed clean, and avoid what He has deemed unclean. This mindset involves looking at an animal and determining if it's clean or unclean. To break this down, let's start by understanding what clean and unclean animals are, beginning with animals like cattle. Leviticus 11 verse 1-3 says, Now Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the animals which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. Among the animals, whatever divides the hoof, having cloven hooves and chewing the cud, that you may eat. By understanding these dietary laws and following them, we can lead healthier, more fulfilled lives. Let's explore these rules further to see how they can help us and honor Yahweh. Yahweh's dietary laws are designed to help us live healthier lives. Let's look at what the Bible says about which animals we can and cannot eat, starting with the clean animals. In Deuteronomy 14 verse 3-6, it says, You shall not eat any detestable thing. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. A cloven hoof is a split hoof or foot like those of cattle, sheep, goats, and deer. Clean animals chew the cud. Cud is partially digested food that these animals bring back up from their stomachs to chew again. While it sounds gross, this process helps them digest their food better and absorb more nutrients. They mostly eat grass, which is why organic, grass-fed beef is considered the best. Now, let's discuss unclean animals. Leviticus 11 verse 4 to 8 states, "Nevertheless, these you shall not eat among those that chew the cud, or those that have cloven hooves. The camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The rock hyrax, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The hare, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. And the swine, though it divides the hoof, having cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. They are unclean to you." Just chewing the cud doesn't make an animal clean. Camels and rabbits chew the cud, but don't have cloven hooves, making them unclean. Pigs have cloven hooves, but don't chew the cud, so they're also unclean. Yahweh also gives rules about fish. Leviticus 11 verse 9 says, "These you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever in the water has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. Your fish must have both fins and scales. For example, snapper, which is delicious, is clean because it has both. Catfish, however, is not clean because it lacks scales." Leviticus 11 verse 10 to 12 explains unclean fish, but all in the seas or in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, all that move in the water or any living thing which is in the water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever in the water does not have fins or scales, that shall be an abomination to you. All sea creatures without fins and scales are unclean. This includes all shellfish, which are not meant to be eaten but considered an abomination. Now, let's look at birds. Deuteronomy 14 verse 20 simply says, "You may eat all clean birds." However, Leviticus 11 verse 13 to 19 provides specifics on unclean birds. "These you shall regard as an abomination among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon after its kind. Every raven after its kind. The ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind. The little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl. The white owl, the jackdaw, and the carrion vulture. The stork, the heron after its kind. The hoopoe, and the bat. These birds are unclean and should not be eaten." Understanding these dietary laws can help us live healthier lives and honor Yahweh. These laws are not meant to restrict us, but to protect us. By following them, we show our trust and respect for Yahweh, knowing that He has our best interests at heart. Yahweh made it simple for us by listing the birds that should not be eaten, so we clearly know what to avoid. Now, let's look at clean and unclean insects. Leviticus 11 verse 21 and 22 says, "Yet these you may eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet with which to leap on the earth. These you may eat, the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind." Although I've never eaten these insects, I know some people have, like chocolate-covered grasshoppers. I'm not suggesting you eat them, just noting that they are considered clean. Regarding unclean insects, Leviticus 11 verse 20 states, All flying insects that creep on all fours shall be an abomination to you. He also mentions other unclean creeping creatures in Leviticus 11 verse 29 to 31 and 41 to 43. These also shall be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep on the earth, the mole, the mouse, and the large lizard after its kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand reptile, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. Every creeping thing that creeps on the earth shall be an abomination. It shall not be eaten. Whatever crawls on its belly, whatever goes on all fours, whatever has many feet among all creeping things that creep on the earth, these you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, nor shall you make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. Yahweh has made it very clear what is meant for our consumption and what is not. Most of us don't have a problem avoiding the unclean animals, but issues arise with foods the Gentile nations consume, which have become normalized, like pork, shrimp, lobster, and crabs. I remember living in London, where crabs were a staple. People would tell us that the yellow stuff in crabs was the poop, and we'd just wipe it off or even eat it, saying it's the best part. But it's all unclean. We often don't think about this because we've been taught by the church that these foods are okay. We've adapted to the ways of lawless individuals and adjusted our eating habits accordingly. But if we step back and understand the differences between clean and unclean animals, we can better appreciate Yahweh and His Torah. Clean animals, like those that chew the cud, are made to digest more nutrients, benefiting our health. Swine, on the other hand, do not digest food the same way. They eat waste and their own droppings, which do not provide our bodies with the nutrients we need. In fact, it can harm us. Remember, what you eat doesn't just satisfy hunger, it fuels and fixes your body. Clean animals provide nutrients that make you healthier and stronger. For example, animals that chew the cud get more nutrients, which then benefit us when we eat them. In contrast, animals like swine, which eat waste, do not provide the necessary nutrients and can harm our bodies. By understanding and following these dietary laws, we can lead healthier lives and honor Yahweh's guidance. Eating certain types of food can actually harm our bodies. Including unhealthy items in your diet can lead to major health issues. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a physician, so you should discuss these matters with your doctor. Now, regarding seafood, anything with fins and scales is clean to eat. If you go fishing, you'll see there are many such fish. However, in the United Kingdom, we love fried catfish, which is not a clean fish. Additionally, shellfish is widely consumed today. People often argue about dietary laws because they don't want to give up bacon, shrimp, snow crabs, and lobster. But let's look at these creatures more closely. We already discussed swine eating their own waste, but what about shellfish? Shellfish are bottom feeders. They walk on the ocean floor, eating waste and the poop of other sea creatures. When I first learned this, it was shocking to see shrimp and crabs all in one place, filtering and feeding on particles in the water. They clean up the sediment, turning waste into their own bodies, making them like garbage cans of the sea. Imagine eating the contents of a vacuum cleaner that has sucked up all the waste from your floors. That's what it's like when we eat shellfish and pork. By consuming these animals, we are filling our bodies with things that are harmful instead of beneficial. When we reject Yahweh's laws and wonder why we are unhealthy and have health issues, we need to look at our diets. For instance, high cholesterol can be linked to eating shrimp. A family member of mine had high cholesterol, and her doctor immediately asked if she ate a lot of shrimp, which can significantly affect cholesterol levels. Again, I'm not a doctor, but we need to understand that rejecting Yahweh's laws and doing what we want can lead to problems. Yahweh gave us laws to help us live fruitful, abundant lives. These laws are not meant to restrict us, but to make our lives better. If we stopped viewing this as a set of restrictive rules, and instead saw it as a guide from a loving Father who wants to keep us safe, healthy, and fruitful, we wouldn't run from it, but towards it. I don't keep the dietary laws for salvation. I keep them because I want to be healthy. Why would I challenge and go against the commandments given by our Creator? Yahweh is our Creator. He created us, and He created all the creatures on this earth. That's why we worship Him. He knows what these creatures eat and how they affect our bodies, because He made our bodies too. Ignoring His guidance on what is good for our bodies makes no sense, especially when we acknowledge Him as our Creator. It's contradictory to say He guides your life, but then reject His dietary laws because you think you don't have to keep them. That mindset doesn't make sense, and I'm not calling anyone dumb, just the idea itself. Most people don't see it this way, and in Christianity, the common counter-argument is what Yahushua said about defilement. Let's address that. The scribes and Pharisees asked Yahushua why his disciples broke the tradition of the elders by not washing their hands before eating bread. Yahushua responded by highlighting their hypocrisy, quoting Isaiah, "These people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men." He then said to the multitude, "Hear and understand. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man." His disciples were concerned that the Pharisees were offended by this, but Yahushua replied that the Pharisees were blind leaders of the blind. Peter asked Yahushua to explain further, and he said, "Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man." This passage, Matthew 15 verse 1 to 20, has been misinterpreted to mean that the dietary laws are no longer relevant. However, Yahushua was addressing a tradition of the elders, not the Bible. The Pharisees were concerned about hand-washing before meals, a man-made tradition, not Yahweh's laws. Yahushua pointed out that following human traditions over divine commandments is hypocritical. Yahushua's statement, "It's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out," was about the heart and intentions, not about dietary laws. If Yahushua and his disciples had eaten unclean food, it would have caused a major controversy. The issue at hand was about hand-washing traditions, not the consumption of unclean animals. To sum up, the idea that Yahushua's words mean we can ignore Yahweh's dietary laws is a misunderstanding. His teachings emphasize the importance of following God's commandments over human traditions and clarified that defilement comes from the heart's intentions, not merely from unwashed hands. Understanding and following Yahweh's dietary laws helps us lead healthier, more obedient lives in alignment with His guidance. Peter and the other disciples didn't start eating unclean animals just because they were with the Messiah. If you don't recognize this, let's go back to the book of Acts and review Peter's vision. In Acts 10 verse 9 to 16, it says, "The next day, as they went on their journey and drew near the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven opened and an object like a great sheet bound at the 4 corners, descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of 4-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, 'Rise, Peter, kill and eat.' But Peter said, 'Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean.' And a voice spoke to him again the 2nd time, 'What God has cleansed you must not call common.' This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up into heaven again." This vision was about salvation coming to the Gentiles, not about eating unclean animals. Peter saw all kinds of unclean animals, and Yahushua told him to kill and eat, but Peter refused because he had never eaten anything unclean. If eating unclean animals was allowed, Peter wouldn't have said no. This shows that their culture and dietary practices had not changed. The change in diet happened when Gentiles took over Christianity and started compromising on certain laws. I don't see this as a salvation issue. I'm not saying you won't be saved if you eat bacon. However, those who reject these dietary laws might also have issues with other laws, reflecting a broader problem with love and obedience to God. Let's look at more dietary laws. Leviticus 17 verse 10 to 14 says, "Whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any stranger who dwells among you eat blood. Whatever man of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who dwell among you who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh. Its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off." Leviticus 7 verse 22 to 25 says, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, you shall not eat any fat of ox or sheep or goat, the fat of an animal that dies naturally, and the fat of what is torn by wild beasts may be used in any other way, but you shall by no means eat it. For whoever eats the fat of the animal of which men offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh, the person who eats it shall be cut off from his people." Deuteronomy 14 verse 21 says, "You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to Yahweh your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk." Deuteronomy 22 verse 6 and 7 says, "If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall let the mother go and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you and that you may prolong your days." Yahweh guided Israel with these laws out of love and concern for their well-being. If you see his laws as coming from a loving Father rather than as restrictive rules, you'll live a life more aligned with his will and receive his blessings. Personally, when I changed my diet and stopped eating pork and shellfish, I became healthier. Our diet significantly affects our health, and those with the biggest health issues often eat lawlessly. The dietary laws are not about salvation, but about maintaining Yahweh's temple, our bodies. We often act like rebellious teenagers who claim to love our parents, but reject their rules, not realizing that these rules are for our benefit. Many of us have learned about Yahweh from people who either didn't truly know him or didn't follow him, leading us to misunderstand his laws. Trusting and following Yahweh's dietary laws will lead to a blessed life. He does not want to control you, but to bless you. If you love him and listen to him, you will have a wonderful relationship with him and see the benefits in your life. Thanks for watching. If this message blessed you, please like and share the video. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Thanks again for watching. Stay blessed.